The cage in the junkyard, hook in suspense. The twin suns were low in the sky, painting the dusty colony in red and gold. Evan walked through the junkyard, his boots crunching on broken glass and rusted bolts. He was a young mechanic, always looking for rare parts to repair old ships. The war had left the colony poor, and everything worth saving had already been stripped or sold. But Evan had a habit of searching the forgotten corners, places where others never bothered to look. Today, the air was dry and hot, and the smell of burnt metal filled his lungs. Scrap towers rose on both sides of him, casting long shadows like walls of a forgotten maze. He kept walking, turning into a narrow path between stacks of old engines and shattered hull plating. Somewhere far in the back, a sound made him stop. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't the creak of shifting junk. It was soft, almost like a cry, but not human. Not animal. It had a strange echo to it, like something part machine, part living thing, curious. Evan followed the sound. He passed a pile of crushed starfighter wings, an old turret, and a cracked plasma cannon. The path ended at a large shape. Under a torn, dirty tarp, the sound came again, weaker this time. He reached out and pulled the tarp aside. Underneath was a small cage, its metal bent and dented. Inside, huddled in the corner, was a creature unlike anything had seen up close. It was a dragon hatchling, or at least it must have been once. Now its wings were broken, one hanging at an unnatural angle, the other covered in rusted metal plates. Its scales were dull and scarred, and some parts of its body had cybernetic implants. One of its eyes was a glowing mechanical lens, the other was clouded and tired. The little creature trembled as it looked up at him. "Ugly thing, isn't it?" A voice called from behind. Evan turned to see the alien junk dealer, a short, four-armed trader with oily skin and a grin full of sharp teeth. "Found it after the last raid," the dealer said, walking closer. It was a war beast, failed its first flight, crashed, and broke itself. Not worth fixing. No one wants a broken fighter. Evan frowned. The dealer tapped the cage with one claw, making the hatchling flinch. "I'm selling it for scrap. Its implants are worth more than the creature. Tomorrow, it goes to the smelter." Evan looked back at the hatchling. It tried to make itself small, its tail curling tight. Then, in a voice so faint he almost missed it, the creature spoke. "Don't let them take me apart." The words were soft but carried something heavy. Evan felt it deep in his chest, the same way he had felt years ago when he'd found a broken droid abandoned in the rain. He had fixed that droid, given it a new life. This hatchling, though, this was different. This was alive. "How much?" Evan asked, his voice low. The dealer laughed. "Too much for a poor mechanic. You're better off buying clean scrap." But Evan didn't move, his eyes still locked on the hatchling. Finally the dealer shrugged. "Fine, give me your best." Tools, the plasma welder and the microspanner set. Those tools were Evan's pride, his lifeline for work, but he didn't hesitate. He unhooked them from his belt and handed them over. The dealer grinned and unlocked the cage. "Your problem now," the alien said. Walking away with his payment, Evan crouched by the cage. The hatchling didn't move until he opened the door. Slowly, it stepped out, each movement stiff and painful. Up close, Evan could see burn marks on the metal parts of its wings. "Easy," he said softly. "I've got you now." The hatchling looked at him for a long moment before speaking again. "My name is Kira." Evan nodded. "I'm Evan, and I'm taking you home." They walked out of the junkyard together. Kira's steps were slow, her breathing uneven. The colony streets were quiet, but Evan could feel eyes watching from doorways. Some whispered, pointing at the broken dragon. Others shook their heads. Another lost cause. They thought, but Evan didn't care. Every step he took, he felt more certain he had done the right thing. Back at his small workshop, he cleared a space. On the workbench, Kira curled up there, too tired to lift her head. Evan lit the lamps and pulled out a notebook. He began sketching designs, ideas for repairs, for new wings. He didn't know if it would work. But he knew one thing. Tomorrow, Kira would not be headed to the smelter. She had a chance. And he was going to make sure she took it outside. The wind carried the faint sound of distant engines in the sky. The world was still dangerous. Still cruel, but inside the little workshop, something had changed. A broken hatchling had found someone who refused to give up on her. And a human mechanic had found something worth more than any part in the junkyard. A mechanic's promise. The workshop smelled of oil and warm metal. Evan moved carefully around the bench, setting out tools, scraps of alloy, and spools of wiring. Kira lay curled on a blanket he had found, her sides rising and falling slowly. She had eaten only a little, still too weak to do much more than watch him. Her mechanical eye followed every movement, glowing faintly in the lamplight. When morning came, the sun spilled pale light through the cracked windows. Evan brought a small plate of food, fresh water, soft protein mash, and some tiny strips of cooked meat. At first Kira didn't move, her claws gripping the blanket. But when he sat nearby and spoke in a gentle voice, she reached forward and began to eat. Her movements were slow, almost cautious, as if expecting the food to be taken away after she finished. Evan set a small toolkit on the bench. "I'm going to check your wings," he said quietly. Kira's tail twitched, her breathing quickened. "They hurt," she murmured. "I know," Evan replied, "but I need to see how bad it is if I'm going to fix them." He worked slowly, speaking to her the whole time. Her left wing had torn membranes, scar tissue, and metal joints that had fused. In the wrong position, the right wing's implants were rusted, their wiring brittle. It was clear that whoever had modified her had done it quickly, without care. Kira winced when he touched certain spots. But she didn't pull away. Evan noticed how she was watching him, searching for the moment when he would get angry or give up. Instead, he put the tools down and looked her in the eye. "I'm not going to throw you away," he said firmly. Kira's mechanical eye flickered, almost like it was adjusting to focus better. "No one fixes the broken ones," she whispered. "I do," Evan replied. "I fix everything I can, and I keep my promises." That afternoon, he began his work. He removed the worst of the rust and cleaned the exposed circuits. Every time a spark popped, Kira flinched. Evan would pause, wait until she nodded, then continue. Hours passed, the workshop filling with the hum of tools and the soft sound of his voice explaining what he was doing. At one point, a shadow passed. Outside the window, a neighbor, a tall woman named Mara, leaned in, shaking her head. "You're wasting your time." "Evan," she called, "that thing's too damaged. Too ugly. No one will hire a dragon that can't fight." Evan didn't look up. "I'm not doing this for hire," he said. Mara frowned and walked away, muttering. Kira had gone still, her claws gripping the blanket again. Evan smiled at her. "Don't listen to them. You're not a waste." Days passed like that. Kira grew more comfortable, sometimes asking questions about the parts Evan used. He showed her how a simple gear turned, how a microservo worked. Her curiosity surprised him. For someone built for war, she seemed to want to understand more about building than destroying. At night, she would rest near the small heater, watching the stars through the workshop window. Evan sometimes wondered what she was thinking, but he didn't ask. He knew trust was something you earned slowly. One evening, as he tightened a repaired joint, he asked, "What happened to you before I found you?" Kira's eyes darkened. "I was made in a breeding forge. The others were strong. Perfect, fast," she said slowly. "When my time came to fly, I fell, my wings cracked. The trainers called me useless. They sold me to scrap merchants." Evan felt his jaw tighten. "Well, they were wrong," he said. "You're going to fly again." "Kira, I promise." From that night onward, he worked with new focus. He began sketching something unusual, a support frame for her wings. Light but strong, it would use thrusters from an old racing bike, combined with stabilizers from a wrecked shuttle. Kira watched him draw, her tail slowly uncurling for the first time. She didn't say it out loud, but a small part of her began to believe he might actually do it. The colony's people kept whispering. Some said Evan was losing his mind. Others said he was hiding a weapon. But Evan ignored them. His hands were steady, his eyes fixed on the task. He wasn't just fixing a machine. He was rebuilding a life. One night, after tightening the last bolt of the first wing frame, Evan stepped back. Kira stretched her wing gently, the new metal shining under the lamp. "It's not finished yet," Evan said. "But it's a start." Kira looked at him, and for the first time, there was no fear in her eyes, only a quiet, fragile hope. Evan smiled. "A promise is a promise, and I'm not done yet." First lift. First fall. The morning air was cool, carrying the faint scent of metal and dust across the colony. Evan stood outside his workshop, tightening the last strap on Kira's wing frame. For days he had been making small adjustments, replacing weak joints, adding lighter plates, balancing the thruster output. Today was the day they would try to fly, even if only for a moment. Kira's claws flexed nervously against the packed dirt, her tail twitching in short, uneven sways. "You're ready," Evan said quietly, checking her harness one last time. Kira didn't answer right away, her mechanical eye flicking between him and the open sky. "What if I fall again?" she finally asked, her voice low. "Then we get up," Evan replied without hesitation. "That's what we do." Kira lowered her head for a moment, then gave a small nod. They moved to the edge of the open yard behind the workshop. It wasn't much space, but there was enough room for a takeoff and a safe landing. In theory, Evan stepped back, remote control in hand, ready to adjust the thrusters manually if something went wrong. The early sun painted her patched wings in gold, the repaired membranes glowing softly. Kira spread them wide, the sound of metal joints moving smooth and steady for the first time in years. "All right," Evan called. "3 steps forward, then push with everything you've got." Kira's claws dug into the dirt. She took 1 step, then another, then a third. Her wings beat hard, the air around her kicking up dust. The thrusters on her harness flared to life, a soft roar filling the yard. Slowly, almost painfully slowly, she began to lift from the ground. For 2 seconds, she was in the air. Her shadow slid across the yard, her eyes wide with shock. But the lift wasn't strong enough. Her left wing frame jerked under strain. The thrusters sputtered, the balance failed. She crashed back down, the impact sending a small cloud of dirt into the air. Evan was at her side instantly. "You're okay," he said, checking for damage. Kira pushed herself up, her breathing fast. I was flying," she whispered, as if testing the words. "Yes," Evan said with a small smile. "And next time you'll fly longer." The rest of the morning was spent making changes. Evan replaced a gear that had jammed under pressure, reinforced the joint with a lighter alloy. Kira watched closely, her fear mixing with determination. The second attempt came just before midday. She ran again, wings snapping open, thrusters glowing. This time she stayed in the air for 5 seconds. It wasn't graceful. Her movements were uneven. Her landing rough, but it was flight. Kira's face lit up with something Evan had never seen before. It wasn't pride yet, but it was close. "I can do it," she said, more to herself than to him. But the excitement faded quickly when she tried a third time. Halfway through her run, one of the old cables snapped, the left wing frame jolted. She tumbled forward, rolling twice before coming to a stop, the sharp smell of burnt wiring filled the air. Kira stayed still, her sides heaving, her voice small. "Maybe I'm just meant to fall." Evan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her neck. "Falling is part of learning," he said softly. "You think I never failed? I've broken more engines than I've fixed, but I kept going." Kira's mechanical. I blinked slowly. "Why?" she asked. "Because giving up means you never see what you could have been," Evan answered. They returned to the workshop. Evan began gathering stronger cables, salvaging parts from old projects. Kira lay in the corner, watching him work. Every so often, her tail twitched, her claws flexed. It was as if some quiet war was happening inside her, between the part of her that wanted to try again and the part that feared another fall. Late into the evening, Evan unveiled something new, a stabilizer attachment, small winglets that could adjust mid-flight to keep her balanced. Kira tilted her head. "That's for me?" "Everything here is for you," Evan said simply. She looked away, hiding the small flicker of emotion that passed across her face. Before sleeping that night, Kira stepped outside. She stared up at the stars, her wings folded neatly. Against her sides, she remembered the forge where she had been made, the trainers shouting when she failed, the cold cage in the junkyard. For the first time, those memories didn't crush her. They only made her want to try again, back inside. Evan glanced at her and saw the way she stood, straighter, less like she was waiting for the world to break her. He didn't say anything, but he knew, tomorrow, the air would belong to her a little more than it did today. The threat from above the next day began quietly. The colony streets calm under the pale light of the twin suns. Evan worked in the workshop, tightening the stabilizer frame on Kira's wings. She sat patiently on the bench, her tail curled, her mechanical eye tracking his every movement. It felt like any other morning, the sound of tools clicking, the smell of oil and metal in the air, but far above, beyond the cloud line. Danger was already moving toward them, unseen. It started as a low hum, barely noticeable. Kira's ears twitched first, her head snapping up toward the sky. Evan paused, listening. The hum grew louder, deeper, carrying a vibration that shook. The tools on the bench, he knew that sound. Engines, too many engines, coming in fast, outside. The colony's alarm sirens began to scream. People spilled into the streets, shouting, pointing upward. Dark shapes broke through the clouds. Sharp, jagged silhouettes against the sunlight. It was a pirate raiding fleet, their black and red banners visible even from the ground. They came in low, formation tight, warships moving like predators closing in on prey. "Kira, inside," Evan said quickly, but she stayed where she was, wings twitching, eyes locked on. "The sky, they're here for the colony," she murmured, voice tense. "Yes, and that's why we're staying out of sight," Evan replied, already pulling the heavy door shut. The sound of distant explosions rolled through the air as the first pirate missiles hit the outer defense towers. Above the colony, the dragon riders scrambled. Sleek, armored dragons took to the skies, their riders shouting commands. They formed a loose shield around the colony, diving to intercept incoming gunships. From the workshop doorway, Kira watched them, her claws digging into the dirt. She had dreamed of flying among them since she was a hatchling. But now she stood grounded, half-repaired, with only the wind from the battle brushing her face. A blast rocked the ground, knocking tools from the shelves. Evan grabbed Kira's harness, dragging it toward her. "We can't hide forever," he said, voice tight. "If those pirates break through, they'll hit everything, including here." Kira turned her gaze to him, confused. "I'm not ready." "You're more ready than you think," he said firmly. He strapped the harness to her back with practiced hands. The stabilizers clicked into place. The thrusters gave a faint hum. Kira's breathing quickened. "Evan, if I fall in the middle of that, you'll get up." He interrupted, locking the final strap. Same as always. Outside, the sky was chaos. Flashes of plasma lit the air. Smoke trails from falling ships streaked toward the ground. The colony's defenses were holding, barely, but more. Pirate ships were breaking through every minute. Evan pointed to the cliffside beyond the workshop. "If you're going to fly, you need space. The cliff will give you the drop you need." They ran together, dust kicking up under their boots. "And claws." Kira's heart pounded in her chest, each step bringing her closer to the edge. The sound of engines screamed overhead. A shadow passing over them, a pirate gunship banking hard toward the colony square. Kira saw its weapons charging, the glow building at the tips. Her wings snapped open instinctively. At the cliff's edge, Evan turned to her. "This is your moment," he said, voice steady despite the battle behind them. Kira swallowed hard, the wind pulling at her wings. "You have to trust me," Evan added, his eyes locked on hers. For a heartbeat, everything went silent except for the rush of air between them. Kira ran, claws tearing into the rock, the thrusters roaring to life. The stabilizers adjusted instantly. Tilting just enough to hold her steady, she leapt into the open sky, the drop pulling her downward. The wind screaming in her ears, her wings caught, the thrusters surged, and she leveled out. The colony spread out below her, the battle unfolding in bursts of light and shadow. Evan's voice came through the small link in her harness. "You're flying, Kira. Now let's make it count." Her fear twisted into something else. Not pride, not yet, but a fierce, unshakable will. The pirates had brought war to her home, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't going to watch from the ground. The leap of faith. The wind roared in Kira's ears as the colony shrank below her. Her wings beat hard, each movement sending small jolts through her metal joints. The stabilizers on her harness shifted, with every gust correcting her balance in tiny, precise motions. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel like an enemy. It felt alive, holding her up, pulling her forward. Evan's voice crackled in her ear through the comlink. "Keep steady, you're gliding smooth. Watch the currents." Kira adjusted her wings, the wind pressing against the patched membranes. Ahead, the pirate gunship she had seen earlier was still banking toward the colony square. Its weapons were glowing, ready to fire. Without thinking, Kira tilted into a dive. The thrusters flared, her speed doubling. The cold air stung her eyes, her body trembling from both fear and thrill. She had never been this high, never been this fast. Every breath was sharp and quick. But she didn't slow down. "You're too close," Evan warned. But Kira didn't pull back. Instead, she angled her approach low, skimming just above the rooftops. The gunship didn't notice her until she was almost on top of it. The pilot's head snapped toward her. Too late. Kira banked hard, her wings slicing across one of the gunship's side turrets. The impact tore the weapon free, sparks scattering through the air. The ship lurched, its pilot fighting for control. Kira climbed sharply, the thrusters burning bright. The stabilizers whined but held firm, keeping her steady. "That's it," Evan's voice came again. "Make them chase you." Kira turned in a wide arc, her shadow sweeping over the colony walls. The gunship swung after her, its remaining weapons firing short bursts of plasma. Bolts of light streaked past her, one grazing the edge of her left wing. The heat seared, but the repairs held. She pulled up sharply, rising high into the pale sky. The gunship followed, engines screaming. Then, without warning, she folded her wings and dropped into a steep dive. The ship tried to match her movement, but overshot. Kira snapped her wings open at the last second. The sudden lift shot her sideways, right under the gunship's belly. Evan's voice was calm. "Hit the stabilizer vents now." Kira twisted, angling her tail toward the ship's underside. The small thruster vents on her harness flared, blasting hot plasma into the gunship's intake vents. The enemy ship jolted violently, smoke pouring from its engines. It spiraled downward, crashing into the open desert beyond the colony walls. Kira's breathing was ragged, her wings aching from the strain, but the fire in her chest burned hotter than the pain. For a heartbeat, she hovered there. The colony below, the open sky all around. Then Evan's voice cut in sharply. "3 more ships incoming from the north. Stay moving." She turned, spotting the black shapes rushing toward the fight. Around her, the other dragons were locked in combat, some diving at gunships, others tangling with smaller attack craft. Kira joined the fray, weaving between bursts of plasma and clouds of smoke. Her smaller frame and the agility of Evan's harness gave her an edge the larger dragons didn't have. She darted in and out of enemy fire, striking at weak points, pulling away before they could hit her. At one point, she caught sight of Evan on the ground. He was outside the workshop now, shouting into the cum while repairing a damaged colony turret. Their eyes met for a split second through the chaos. He didn't smile. There was no time for that, but she could see the trust in his face. It gave her strength. As the last of the northern ships tried to retreat, Kira pushed harder. Her wings ached. Her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. She chased the final pirate craft past the edge of the colony. One clean burst from her harness thrusters sent her spinning. Over it, she dropped a salvaged grenade, one Evan had rigged for her earlier, right into its rear vents. The explosion lit the sky, the pirate ship breaking apart in a bright flash. Kira banked away, the debris tumbling into the desert below. For a moment, there was quiet in her cum link. Then Evan's voice came, softer now. "Come home, Kira." She circled back toward the colony, the smoke clearing, the sirens slowly fading. The battle wasn't over for the galaxy, but here, for now, they had won, and for Kira. The air no longer felt like a place she didn't belong. It was hers, and she was never giving it up again. The sky's new defender, the smoke over the colony hung low, curling in thin black ribbons against the pale sky. Kira hovered above the walls, her wings beating in steady rhythm, the hum of her harness thrusters blending with the sound of distant sirens. Below her, the colony's defenders were regrouping, dragging damaged turrets into place, tending to the wounded. For a moment, she simply circled, scanning for movement, unwilling to land while any threat remained. The wind carried the acrid scent of burned metal and scorched stone, a reminder of how close they had come to being overrun. Evan's voice came through the cum, calm but firm. "Kira, sweep the north edge again. Make sure no raiders slipped past." She banked hard, tilting her patched wings, the stabilizers shifting with practiced ease. Her shadow swept over the outer farms and the winding river that cut through the desert plain. All seemed still, until a flicker of movement caught her mechanical eye. A pirate skimmer, small and fast, was racing low over the sand. Its open cargo bed was filled with stolen crates. The driver gunned the engine, kicking up a cloud of dust behind him. Kira's lips curled into a snarl. "They're running with supplies," she said into the cum. "Then stop them," Evan replied without hesitation. She dropped low, the wind biting at her face. The skimmer swerved as the driver caught sight of her shadow. Kira closed the distance quickly, her smaller size letting her cut sharper turns than any larger dragon could. She came in from the side, slamming her wing frame against the vehicle's flank. The impact sent it skidding across the sand, flipping onto its side. The pirates scrambled out, weapons drawn. Kira landed hard in front of them, her wings spread wide. The glow from her thrusters reflected off their visors. One of them fired, the plasma bolt grazing her shoulder plate. She barely flinched, stepping forward with a low growl. The sight of the broken hatchling standing unshaken made the raiders hesitate. From above, another dragon rider swooped down, binding the pirates in thick restraining cords. The rider glanced at Kira, nodding once in respect before taking the prisoners away. It was a small moment, but Kira felt something shift inside. She wasn't just a rescued scrap anymore. She was part of the defense. Evan's voice came again. "Good work, Kira. Now get back here. We've still got repairs to handle." She launched back into the sky, circling toward the colony center. The plaza below was alive with movement. People carrying tools, patching walls, hauling debris. Everywhere she went, heads turned to watch her. Some pointed, whispering in surprise. Others waved, calling her name. Landing near the workshop, she folded her wings carefully. Evan was there, grease on his face, still working on the damaged turret. "You did more than I asked," he said without looking up. "I couldn't let them get away," Kira replied. "That's the spirit," he muttered, tightening a bolt. A group of children approached slowly, clutching scraps of paper and bits of metal. They looked nervous, their eyes wide as they stared. At her wings, one small boy stepped forward, holding out a jagged piece of painted metal. "It's from my dad's shop," he said quietly. "They broke it, But you saved us. Kira bent her head low so the boy could place it between her claws. Thank you, she said softly. The boy's face lit up before he ran back to his friends. As the suns dipped lower, the sky turned a deep orange, the other. Dragons landed one by one, their riders dismounting. Kira stood among them, smaller and patched together, but standing tall all the same. The captain of the riders, a broad-shouldered human woman with a scar down her cheek, approached. I saw you out there, she said to Kira. Fast, sharp, fearless. We could use that. Kira's mechanical eye flickered. I'm not like the others, she replied. No, the captain said. And that's why you're dangerous to our enemies. The words settled in her chest like a spark. For years she had been told what she couldn't do, what she wasn't worth. Now, the people who fought the hardest battles were saying she belonged. As night fell, Kira launched into the air again, patrolling the dark edges of the colony. The stars stretched above her, bright and endless. She no longer felt like she was chasing the sky. She was part of it, and though she didn't say it out loud, she knew the truth. The broken hatchling was gone. In her place was something new. The sky's newest defender. A new sky the night after the battle was quieter than anyone expected. The colony's fires had been put out, the smoke drifting away into the cool desert air. Above, the stars shimmered like shards of glass scattered across a dark table. Kira, perched on the roof of the workshop, her wings folded, the harness still humming faintly from the day's flight. She could see the entire colony from here, the patched walls, the repaired gates, the flicker of lights in the homes. Evan stepped out, a mug of steaming tea in his hands. He climbed up to the roof, sitting beside her without a word. For a while, they just listened, the faint hum of distant generators, the occasional bark of a guard dog, the rustle of the night wind. Kira tilted her head toward him. You didn't have to fix me, she said softly. I didn't fix you, Evan replied. I just gave you the chance to show what you already had. She was quiet for a long moment. Her mechanical eye focused on the horizon where the desert met the night sky. When I was in the cage, she murmured, I thought my life was already over. I thought I would never fly again. Now, I feel like I've only just begun. Evan smiled, taking a sip of his tea. That's because you have, he said simply. Down in the streets, people were gathering in the plaza. Word had spread of the broken dragon who had fought like she was born for the sky. Families brought food, music started playing. Laughter began to replace the fear from earlier. Children pointed toward the roof, calling her name. Some even held up rough sketches they had made of her in flight. Kira's chest tightened at the sight. She had never been anyone's hero before. Evan nudged her shoulder. They're waiting for you, he said. Kira hesitated, her claws gripping the edge of the roof. What if I'm not what they think I am? She asked quietly. Evan looked at her with steady eyes. You're exactly what they think, and more. She leapt from the roof, her wings catching the cool night air. Gasps rose from the crowd as she descended, the thrusters glowing like twin stars against the darkness. She landed in the center of the plaza, folding her wings slowly. For a heartbeat, the crowd was silent. Then cheers erupted, the sound rolling over her like a wave. The captain of the dragon riders stepped forward. In all my years, she said loudly so all could hear, I've never seen a first flight turn a battle. From this day on, the skies of this colony are yours to protect. Kira's head lifted, pride burning in her chest. The crowd echoed. The words, voices overlapping in a chant of her name. A small girl stepped forward, clutching a simple necklace made from bits of polished scrap. She held it out with trembling hands. For you, she whispered. Kira bent her head low, letting the girl place it gently around her neck. It wasn't gold. It wasn't fine work, but it was the most valuable thing she had ever owned. As the celebration went on, Kira stood beside Evan. He didn't say much, just rested a hand against her side. They both knew this moment was more than just victory. It was proof that no one was too broken to rise again. The colony lights glowed, warm against the darkness, and the air above them felt wide and open. When the crowd began to drift away, Evan looked up at her. "You ready?" he asked. "For what?" She replied. He smiled. "For the next flight." She spread her wings, the night wind curling between the patched membranes. The harness purred to life, the stabilizers adjusting, and together they ran, leapt, and rose into the endless dark. Stars seemed closer than ever. The ground below faded into shadow. Up here, there were no cages, no voices telling her she couldn't. There was only the sky, the wind, and the steady beat of her wings. The broken hatchling was gone. What remained was a defender, a flyer, a legend in making. And as the twin moons rose over the desert, Kira knew one truth that would never leave her. The sky was hers now, and no one would ever take it away.